You know what's weird? Almost everyone you know is earning more money than they were 5 years ago. Wages went up. Job titles changed. People switched companies, got promoted, picked up side income. And almost everyone you know still says the same thing. I don't know where it all goes. That's a strange sentence when you think about it. These are people who got exactly what they asked for. They got the raise. They hit the number they used to dream about. And somehow the feeling never arrived. Here's what makes it stranger. When you ask them how much money it would take to finally feel comfortable, the answer is almost always the same. A bit more than they make right now. Ask a person earning $40,000 and they'll say 50. Ask a person earning $200,000 and they'll say 250. Same gap, different number. That's not a coincidence, and it's not a character flaw. There's a mechanism underneath it, and researchers have been measuring it for decades. Let's keep this fair, because the popular explanation for this, that people are just bad with money, or greedy, or addicted to spending, turns out to be mostly wrong. Let's start with what actually happens to a raise. Say you get one. Not a huge one. $4,800 a year before tax. Call it about $300 a month in your account. Month 1, you notice it. You check the balance twice. It feels like something changed. Month 2, you make one small adjustment. Maybe you stop looking at the price of the grocery items you were checking before. Maybe you switch to the delivery option instead of driving over. Month 3, you make another one. The gym you'd been putting off. A slightly better phone plan. Nothing reckless. Nothing you'd have to defend to anybody. By month 6, someone asks how the new salary is treating you, and you genuinely have to think about it. And by month 12, the money is gone. Not spent on anything you could point to, just absorbed. If you had to list where it went, you couldn't. That's the thing people describe when they say the raise disappeared. It didn't disappear. It got converted into a new normal so gradually that no single decision ever felt like a decision. Now, the temptation here is to say, well, that's just weak discipline. But feelings and math are two very different things. And the math says something more uncomfortable. Go back to the first real raise you ever got. Not pocket money. The first one that changed what you could do on a Saturday. Something happened in that moment that nobody warns you about. Your standard of living went up, and your standard of living has a memory. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, or the hedonic treadmill. The basic finding is simple, and it's been replicated for 50 years. Humans adjust to improved circumstances remarkably fast. The upgrade produces a burst of satisfaction. Then that satisfaction fades, and the upgrade quietly becomes the new baseline. Here's the part that matters. Once it becomes the baseline, going back to the old level doesn't feel neutral anymore. It feels like a loss. The apartment you were perfectly happy in 3 years ago would now feel like a downgrade. Not because the apartment changed, because your reference point did. So the treadmill isn't about wanting more. It's about the floor rising underneath you. And a rising floor means the same amount of money buys progressively less of the feeling you were buying it for. That's mechanism number 1. But by itself, it doesn't explain the whole thing. Because if this were only about adaptation, more money would eventually stop helping at all. And that's not what the data shows. Here's where I have to be honest with you, because if I only showed you the downsides of earning more, I'd be doing what every finance influencer does. For about a decade, The most quoted statistic in personal finance was that happiness stops improving above $75,000 a year. That came from real research, a study by Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton, published in 2010, and it got repeated everywhere. Then in 2021, a researcher named Matthew Killingsworth tested it differently. Instead of asking people to remember how they felt, he pinged them at random moments through an app and asked how they felt right then. 1,725,000 responses, 33,000 people. The plateau wasn't there. Day to day, well-being kept climbing past 75,000 and past 80 at basically the same rate as below it. Later, Killingsworth and Kahneman worked on it together and found the nuance. For most people, happiness keeps rising with income, though for an already unhappy minority, the improvement flattens out around 100,000. So let's be clear about what that means. More money genuinely does make most people's daily lives better. Anyone telling you money doesn't matter is selling you some tea. This is my favorite study in this entire video, and it involves cars, so stay with me. In the Netherlands, there's something called the postcode lottery. Every week it picks a postal code at random, and everyone in that code who bought a ticket wins cash, plus a brand new BMW. Economists realized this was an accident of perfect design. The winners are random. The street is random. So you can watch what a sudden windfall does to a neighborhood, and you can compare it to identical neighborhoods where nothing happened. The findings came out in the American Economic Review in 2011. The winners themselves behaved fairly sensibly. Their extra spending was mostly limited to cars and other durable goods. Most of them actually sold the BMW. Then the researchers looked next door, at the neighbors, people who hadn't bought a ticket, people who won nothing, whose income did not change by a single cent. Those neighbors bought significantly more cars. Not more furniture, not more vacations, cars. The effect was strongest right next door, and it faded fast with distance. Sit with that for a second. Their income didn't change. Their needs didn't change. The only thing that changed was what was parked 40 feet away. The number everyone talks about is your salary. What nobody talks about is your street. If that were just about cars, it'd be a fun trivia fact. It isn't. In 2016, two economists, Marianne Bertrand and Adair Morse, published a study called Trickle-Down Consumption. They tracked what happens to ordinary households when the richest households around them get richer. The pattern held. When the top of the income distribution pulled away, everyone below spent a larger share of what they earned. Their estimate is that non-rich households could have saved up to about 3% more of their income each year if top incomes had simply grown at the same pace as the middle since the early 1980s. 3% doesn't sound like a headline. Over a working life, it's most of a retirement. But here's the detail that gives the game away. The extra spending wasn't spread evenly. It concentrated in visible things. The categories other people can see, and the households most exposed to all this reported more financial strain. States with higher top incomes had more personal bankruptcy filings. So this isn't people treating themselves. It's people keeping up. And it shows up in the one number nobody posts online. What's left over at the end? Now put the three pieces together, because separately they're interesting, and together they explain the whole thing. 1. Your baseline rises to meet your income, and it never comes back down. 2. Your baseline isn't set by your own past. It's set by what's around you. 3. What's around you is the visible part. And the visible part is the expensive part. That's the whole machine. And here's the cruel piece of arithmetic that makes it inescapable. When you earn more, you don't just get more money. You usually move. Better neighborhood, better office, better circle. The raise buys you a new set of neighbors, and your new neighbors reset the baseline all over again. You're not chasing a target. You're carrying it with you. That's why the gap is always the same, at 40,000 and at 200,000. It's not a number. It's a distance. And distance doesn't shrink when you move faster. The real trap isn't lifestyle inflation, and it isn't weak willpower. The real trap is that you're running a comparison you never agreed to enter against people whose finances you cannot actually see, because you see their car. You don't see the loan on it. You see the house. You don't see what's left after the payment. Income is private. Spending is public. You're comparing your entire financial reality against everyone else's highlight reel and losing on purpose. Let me steel man the other side, because there is one. Some lifestyle inflation is the entire point of earning money. If a raise means your kid gets a safer route to school, or you stop doing the repair yourself at midnight, or you sleep better, that's not a leak. That's the money working. The research backs this up. Killingsworth's data is clear that higher income really does improve day-to-day life. The distinction isn't whether you spend more. It's whether the upgrade was yours or borrowed. An upgrade you'd still choose on an island with no one watching is a purchase. An upgrade that only makes sense because somebody would see it is a payment on a comparison. Same dollar, completely different thing. So when someone says they earn more than they ever have and still feel behind, they're not confused, and they're not bad with money. They're adapting, exactly the way humans are built to adapt. The same machinery that lets you recover from bad years is what quietly resets you after good ones. You can't switch that off, but you can do one thing with it. You can decide, before the money arrives, where it goes. Because the raise only disappears in the gap between when it lands and when you assign it. Adaptation is fast, but it isn't faster than a decision you already made. And ask yourself one question about the next upgrade you're considering. Would I still want this if nobody ever found out I had it? Because that's the only answer that matters. If you felt this, the raise that vanished, the number that keeps moving, tell me in the comments where yours went. I read them. And the honest ones are usually the same story with different props. And if you're wondering what happens when this pattern runs for 30 years, and what it does to the one account most people never check until it's too late, that's a completely different conversation. That one's next.